Nigeria, oh Nigeria. Nigeria, how do I begin? This was written 2 years ago, or more than 2 years ago, June 2020. However, I'm repeating it now because it is still relevant. Nothing has changed. One of the greatest challenges in writing is at the beginning. You may have a pretty good idea of what you want to write, but get stuck on how to start. Beginning has always been a problem, not only to writers, but to inventors, revolutionaries, and pioneers in all human endeavors as well. Get the beginning well, the rest, in most cases, will fall into place like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle when cracked. I want to talk about the good old Nigeria, hoping it will rekindle our patriotism, sense of sacrifice and unity, and give us hope that our current seemingly hopeless condition is but a phase that can be overcome with the grit of will. In the words of Aristotle, it is during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light. So, how do I begin? Charles Dodgson, born 27 January 1832 and died 14 January 1898, was a mathematician at Oxford. One day, he was rowing the daughters of Dean Henry Liddell down the Thames when he told them a surreal story. Alice, 10-year-old daughter of Liddell, hankered after Dodgson to write down the story. Right, he did, but under the pseudonym Lewis Carroll, entitled it Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Most popular as Alice in Wonderland, and released in 1865. I'm sure most of you must have read Alice in Wonderland, even though the reading culture is now so bad that people no longer read. In the book, a white rabbit was asked by a king to read some relevant information, and putting on his spectacles, he asked, "Where shall I begin? Please, Your Majesty." The king, in a grave tone, told him, "Begin at the beginning and go on till you come to the end, then stop." Now, I need to begin at the beginning so that I stop at the end. However, that beginning cannot be that Buratai is back in Abuja after saying he won't be back until he obliterates Boko Haram some 2 months ago. A feat accomplished by Idris Deby in 2 weeks. That the president and his vice have at various times given the order for the big bosses to be in Maiduguri is not news. It is also not news that not once were they told to return. Yet they are always in Abuja till the next order. That, too, I am not beginning with. Will the yet-to-be investigated allegation by Nyesom Wike against a general engaged in oil bunkering be a good beginning? Or the case of the murdered and cannibalized General Idris Alkali take the honor? Perhaps the forgotten case of the vehicles found in the Duradu Lake of Death, or maybe the report of the post-2011 election violence, or, better still, that of the PDP woman leader burnt alive in Kogi, or perhaps Bola Iges, Funsho Williams. You see, there are many others competing for attention. For instance, who killed Deputy Commissioner of Police Usman Umar 1 year ago? What happened to the Chibok inquiry or Rotimi Amechi's allegation that Femi Fani-Kayode collected 2 billion naira as aviation minister and bolted away with it? I do not think I should also begin with any of the plethoras of cases we abandoned and swept under the carpet. It suffices to say such an attitude, either out of selective amnesia, sentiments based on any affiliation, or personal interest based on any mundaneness, breeds nothing but the feeling of injustice and fairness. That gives rise to discontents and malcontents, which make people become prosecutors, judges, and executioners in matters that otherwise they will willingly submit to the authorities. And our security and judicial systems get mired in confusion. Once a nation state finds itself in such a situation, only a few options are left for it to continue. Most importantly, Sheikh Uthman Danfodio's ethos for a nation's survival should become a national creed. Its leaders must urgently embrace justice and fairness, and the laws of the land must equally be applied to king and serf. Then the leaders must truly see leadership as service to fatherland, and not a means for them and their families to aim at owning the land. In his book, Bayan Wujub al-Hijrah, the revered scholar, revolutionary, and founder of the Sokoto Caliphate said, and I quote, "A kingdom can endure with unbelief, but it cannot endure with injustice. The easiest way to serve the people is to empower them to be able to easily access basic needs. The little money in their pockets should be valuable enough to guarantee that. Once the people can afford basic needs as a result of leaders' efforts, crime rate and discontentment will take flight. What way is better to empower than to provide work for the majority? In the 1960s, the premiers of the North, East, and West, Sir Ahmadu Bello, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Chief Obafemi Awolowo, invested heavily in ventures that educated their people, gave them employment, and made them producers rather than consumers, exporters instead of importers, givers as opposed to beggars, politically conscious rather than politically docile. This made our currency strong and our economy solid. Oh yes, I agree, people voted for their own even then, but it was not solely because they were their own. The politicians then identified with their people, fiercely guarded their honor, fought for their well-being, cried when they cried, and laughed when they laughed. And because of the provincial nature of the times, their people were much closer to them than others. That situation is not subsisting now. Again, since they had regional governments, it is all the more understandable. Thus, by 1972, when General Yakubu Gowon increased the annual minimum wage from 312 naira to 720 naira, based on the famed Udoji report, 60 naira was equivalent to $100. The minimum wage was thus $1,200. Now, our minimum wage of 30,000 naira is less than $100. In 1980, $100,000 was equivalent to 50,500 naira. The question one is tempted to ask is, why? And the answer is simple. In 1980, Nigeria was a producer. I came across a compilation of Nigeria's productive capacity then, and I believe it is worth ruminating over. Nigeria refined petrol and exported its allied products. Volkswagen cars were assembled in Lagos, Peugeot in Kaduna, Leyland in Ibadan, Steyr in Bauchi produced tractors, while Anamco produced buses and trucks in Enugu. The windshield and glasses, batteries, seats, tires, brake pads, etc. were all produced locally. Impressively, the tires were produced from rubber grown on plantations here. Refrigerators, air conditioners were produced by Thermocool here, and Sanyo in Ibadan assembled radio and television sets. Textile mills in Kaduna and Chelarams churned out clothes from homegrown cotton, while water pipes were produced in Kano, and Bata and Leonard's produced quality shoes from locally tanned leather. In the area of cosmetics and common household needs, PZ was there, and AJ Seward and Kingsway Chemist produced Lotus, Jelly, Nku, Shield, etc. One can only imagine the number of people employed by such outfits. The arrest of capital flight and the hard currency the country earned. The internally generated revenue, well managed, could propel a nation with serious leaders into the league of big players. Crime rate will be low because many idle minds and hands will be out of the devil's reach. To achieve that, what we need now is servant leadership. A servant leader is a leader whose philosophy is to serve the people. A story was told of Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him. Umar, he was a caliph after the Prophet's death. The story said Umar got curious that his leader, Caliph Abu Bakr, always left immediately after morning prayers. To kill that curiosity, one morning he followed him discreetly at a distance and saw him go into a house. After some hours, Abu Bakr emerged, and when he disappeared into the horizon, Umar went into the house where he met a blind, frail old woman with kids surrounding her, playing and eating in a clean environment. To his inquiry, she told him, "I am old and blind. I am responsible for these orphan kids here. They are my grandchildren. I have no one to take care of me." Then Umar asked her, "Who is that visitor who comes to you every single day?" And she answered, "I don't know. He never once shared his name with me." Then he asked her, "What does he do?" To which she said, "Every morning he comes, he cleans my home, washes my clothes, grinds our wheat, and bakes our bread, and then he leaves." Of course, we know this isn't possible here or anywhere now. The modern equivalent is to provide the wherewithal for the food and clean environment. But whatever the case, a leader must, by his actions, give hope to his people and the confidence to excel. Again, if the Chinese, in one of their proverbs, believe the fish begins to rot from the head, then the head must show more patriotism. Thank you.